Hello and welcome back to. We haven't done one of these in a while. This is another edition of Cavaliers Conversation. I don't think we did one since you were on the last one when we talked NBA playoffs. We previewed that.
Oh yeah.
When Danny and Marlowe joined us.
Oh, Mr.
But,
Medlock.
but now we have another outside guest who's actually going to be joining us on the site soon, which we're really excited about. This is How do you want to be introduced?
Oh, H-bomb. Yeah.
Well, this is H-bomb, guys. We're very excited to have him on this edition of Cavaliers Conversation because we think his input, it's good to have another guy on board. And
I'm looking forward to more than anything though. Twitter battle between Hiroki and Trevor. It's going to be legendary for the ages.
Yeah, this kid can pull out any counter argument or spark up an argument, and he'll have you agreeing with him by the end. So with that said, let's see how that goes today. I'm excited. So, we're going to talk a lot of Cavaliers, and then at the end we'll talk a little bit of what we've seen from 2 games of the finals so far. But first we're going to start off with not necessarily who the Cavaliers are going to take at number 1, but if you're looking at this team right now, looking at the players who might not be on the roster next season and the players who definitely don't stand a chance of being re-signed, what do you guys see as the Cavaliers' biggest need this offseason? You can lump it into one whole category if you'd like, but Chris, you want to start?
Yeah, I think it's really determining a finite group of guys you want to move forward with. I have this theory, and I'll share this very briefly here, and I'm going to write about this soon, but I really think there's going to be this period in the NBA coming up soon where, depending on what LeBron does, there's going to be a power vacuum. You're going to have there's going to be a few teams that are really good now, like the Spurs, that are just going to kind of they're going to get old and kind of fade away. But in the next few years, there's only a few teams I think that are currently built for a championship run. You have the Chicago Bulls, assuming Derrick Rose comes back healthy and mentally clear. You have the Thunder, if they can kind of figure out their role players and get a big who can score, and they just get rid of Kendrick Perkins. Like, they have to do that. If the Clippers keep Chris Paul, figure out their bench and hire a good coach, they're there. You hear these talk about the Rockets. I mean, if they make 1 or 2 really good moves, they're right there with James Harden.
Yeah, and they have that at their disposal.
Yeah, and they have guys like you love Chandler Parsons, and Omer Asic's a solid young big. So there's just like a few teams like that. There's all these flawed teams like the Knicks, the Nets, the Grizzlies. There's all these teams that I just don't think are going to get there. The Cavs, I really think, are one of these teams that if they're handled correctly and things just fall into place, they can become a contender quicker than you would expect. But it's all about finding that select group of guys you want to build around. They have Kyrie, the new NBA Live 14 cover board. I don't know if you guys saw that. You have Waiters, who's I think next year's a big season for him. Tristan, I think, is definitely a keeper. But then there's some pieces. That's like 3 guys out of you need 7 to 8. So they need to figure out. Nerlens would be a good start. You probably need to figure out if you want to commit to Tyler Zeller. If not now, soon. Anderson Varejao, you either flip him or you try to maybe work him into the long-term picture. Mo Spates, let's see what he wants to do. Ellington, TJ Miles, you have all these different pieces, and then the draft's going to add at least 2 pieces. And I really think, not positionally because there's so many needs, but they need a core group of guys. And this is the summer, because you can't bank on LeBron coming. You need to find that core group of guys you want to build with starting in the fall.
So, helping to, put the glue in that core, where do you think, the first step needs to be?
Because I don't think Waiters or Tristan is ever going to become that true second to Scottie Pippen and Kyrie's Michael. They need that guy. And I don't know if Nerlens is the guy, but if I was going to have to take a long-term bet based on his skill set between him, Dion, and Tristan, I would say him because he's going to be a defensive force. And even if you don't need him to score, because Dion scores 20 a game, Kyrie scores 25, and you have scoring from the bench, you maybe don't need him to score more than 14 a game.
H-Bomb, what are your thoughts?
I believe that, with the number 1 overall pick, it's tricky. You talked about the handling of the Cavs a little bit earlier, and honestly, it's a topic that frustrates me a little bit. In a very guard-heavy draft this year, last year they took a shooting guard when they had a small forward on the board, who in my opinion is going to be a great player in Harrison Barnes.
And a guy that we saw in the playoffs just totally took his game to another level.
Right.
When he got the minutes, yep.
I agree with that 100%. And, if you look at that this year, I think that there's almost a little bit of a stigma behind taking a guy like Otto Porter number 1, because nobody really sees him as a number 1 overall talent. A lot of people think he's going to be a consistently good player, give you about 10 good seasons, but nobody sees him as a number one overall talent. Whereas if you took a guy like Harrison Barnes last year and you left a need at shooting guard, I believe that a lot of people think that Ben McLemore is going to be a superstar for years to come. And then in the questioning of a big at number one, because you don't get that, later in the draft there are guys like Mike Muscala from Bucknell and Colton Iverson that are going to be available in the second round. I think are going to be solid producers in the NBA. Plus with the 19th overall pick, and with some players that they're maybe looking to dump, such as Vereshao, there's a chance to wheel and deal a little bit, maybe move up a few spots, get a guy like Gorgie Deng.
Mm-hmm. Interesting thing here. Hypothetically, if Nerlens' knee is as bad as it's been talked about to be, and they're saying, I don't know if you can really believe Sam Amico, but there's talks that Nerlens could fall. Who do you take? Would you take Porter or would you go McLemore and go with the 3-guard rotation? Terry Pluto from the Plain Dealer, who I think isn't totally in touch, but he's kind of one of those guys that's out there promoting maybe take McLemore and you have Waiters, you have Kyrie, you have McLemore, and that'd be a better way to go.
McLemore, I do think, just in my opinion, is going to be a bona fide superstar. And teams like Oklahoma City have succeeded in 3-guard sets. Then again, that team's a little bit different because they had Davos Ephalosha starting at the 2, and he's not really a scorer. So then you brought in Harden as a change of pace along with Westbrook. But starting with a 3-guard rotation I think wouldn't be a bad idea because I think McLemore's going to be a bona fide superstar. Personally, I have a little bit of bias on this because I'm not the biggest fan of Nerlens Noel. As much as I think he's a great talent, I don't think he'll fit into the Cavs well, and with other good bigs in the draft, I would like to pass on him.
And with that, the more and more, where I stood the number one pick from day one. But the more and more as time goes along, I kind of just want the draft to be here because I think that I keep on thinking that I don't think Nerlens might not be the right pick at number one. And Dan was bringing up great points about how he would have to be going up against the elite centers of the NBA in general, playing in the Central Division, and guys like Roy Hibbert and Joakim Noah.
And Andre Drummond, who's
he was on the rise, definitely, and Greg Monroe for that matter too. Someone point out that he's right now he's weighing less than Dion Waiters came in in summer training, but we knew how much Dion was eating during his time off, recovering from the energy
and spending nights in the club with Meek Mill.
Definitely, and Kyrie.
Yeah, Kyrie looking turd with Fabulous.
But just as time goes on, I think there's an urgency now. We know that Noel's definitely probably not going to start this season. That most at the earliest can come back in December.
Last 2 things I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in a roundabout way, Dan Gilbert, as much as I respect him for being as aggressive as he is in a small market like Cleveland, he might be putting too much pressure to contend right away. The team's not ready to contend next year. I don't care if you draft, unless you go out and get all the right free agents and Nerlens magically is healthy and can contribute right away, they're not going to be ready to contend next year. That being said, this is awful to say, but if they're bad this year and you have the lottery next year that's just incredibly stacked, if you're anywhere between 1 and 8 in the draft next year, you're gonna have a chance to get a small forward. There's 3 or 4 next year that are gonna. Andrew Wiggins is obviously if you get number 1, you got holy crap. Glenn Rice is gonna come out of Michigan, and I think he could be very good. Parker going to Duke could be. They're saying he could be more power forward now, a little kind of like Anthony Bennett, but he could still maybe play the 3 depending on how his game develops. And there's other players that you could get. There's an international guy, I can't remember his name, but he was number 4 in draft 6 for big board for next year already. And there's options next year. So if they're bad next year, you get a chance to they would get a chance to fix that mistake.
Definitely interesting. That's what I was reading a lot about with the Charlotte Bobcats. Is if they had gotten the lottery this year, their plan. What I was reading was to take Nerlens this year, and even if they have to let him sit all year, it's not a big deal because of the stacked lottery next year. So I guess worst case scenario is if Kyrie continues to have injury problems, if Waiters doesn't progress, if the guys on the inside, Thompson doesn't progress, and if anybody doesn't work out this year, you still have a shot at the stacked lottery next year.
And with that said, we're gonna talk about what we think the Cavaliers are gonna do with the number 1 pick this season. Hopefully we're not talking about the same thing come around a year from now. But that said, I see, with the number 1 pick, it's going to change daily for me between 3 guys, and that's Nerlens, Porter, and McLemore. And, the thing is, the more I see of them, the more I read about them, that'll become my favorite for the day or something like that. Kind of just like how I listen to Kanye West albums. Like, I never really have a true favorite. The one I listen to is my favorite at the moment. But things like that, I just, for me, I'm sold on Nerlens from the start, and I'm still going with him at number 1. But I mean, my opinion could definitely change between now and June 27th. But just the interesting thing about this draft class is how a lot of the players came to rise to number 1 in a lot of mock drafts. Like, Shabazz was an early favorite at number 1, and very, very early, like preseason.
He's now a guy that, realistically, if the Cavs really, really wanted to take a gamble at 19 and felt confident they could get a big in the second round, he could easily be available at 19. I think,
I expect him to go in the top 10, but...
No.
I heard of him. I'm still hearing him going to maybe the Pistons at 8. Yeah.
From what I've seen, his stock, due to the stuff with his dad, due to the concern about his game and just his work ethic and stuff.
Where his dad changing his name.
Have him going all the way down to maybe around the Celtics range at 16. And, if he has like another bad workout, or like his stock just keeps falling, a la Jared Sullinger a year ago, he could really be in that range at 19. Or, if a team really likes him and wants to take a gamble, the Dallas Mavericks are openly shopping that pick to save themselves money for the free agency. I mean, he's a guy that, realistically, I think could be like a sneaky. If the Cavs wanted to take a little bit of risk, maybe flip it to take Shabazz. I mean, it's not really a bad idea.
We're gonna get back on track though, real quick. So like I was saying, like before the college season, Shabazz was our favorite at number 1, and like you said, he's fallen all the way to talks of even dropping out of the top 10, and then Nerlens was hovering around 1 always, and then he came to premonition when Marcus Smart said he was going to withdraw from the draft, and he kind of came up in an odd way to number 1. Like, the thing about these players just coming up to number 1, I don't really think they ever did anything to, really sell me that they were a number 1 overall pick from their playing sample in college. But with that said, it's been a weird draft class this year. A very deep draft, I think, but I think the talent level is a little lower than years past. But with that said, we'll start with you, Hiroki. If you were the Cleveland Cavaliers, what would you do with the number 1 pick in this situation?
Let me tell you, I would say no to Nerlens Noel, and let me tell you why. Because for every Hakeem Olajuwon, there's a Sam Bowie. Bigs are notorious for breaking down, a la Greg Oden a couple years ago, particularly when they're not built correctly. If you're banging with guys like Roy Hibbert, Andre Drummond, Joakim Noah, you got to be big, you got to be strong. And if you're telling me that there's a guy that we want to draft at number 1 that's later than one of the guards that we have on our team when he first came in, Plus, he's an offensive liability currently because he's got no jump shot and he's not going to be able to get the easy looks that he got in college. Frankly, I would have no problem with taking a guy like Otto Porter number 1 because he addresses a need and I think he's going to be a solid player. I know that there's the stigma around him because, he doesn't seem like a number 1 overall talent, but I would have no problem with that. Simply because, also, you can get a big later in a draft with a guy like Mike Muscala, Colton Iverson, or even if you want to swing a deal a little bit earlier to get one of the guys that's available in the mid-first round. As for if you were to take a guy like Ben McLemore, number 1, there are small forwards all around the draft. There's Reggie Bullock at 19, should be still available. So is Dario Saric.
He might be pulling out. I don't know if you've seen some reports.
Yeah, I haven't heard about that. But so there are going to be small forwards, I think, that are available even if he's out. Bullock should be available at 19. And even if you want to take a gamble with a guy like Deshaun Thomas, early second round, I think it would be possible. I would just stay away from Nerlens, though, because, not every big man taking number 1 is going to be Hakeem Olajuwon. He very well could be Sam Bowie, and then, where are we